radical, enlightened, important. And the men who signed the Declaration of Independence declaring not only independence from England, but also the intention to create such a government were themselves risking their lives in order to do so. Because if the American Revolution had been lost by the colonists, they would have been executed as traitors by the King of England. But here's the rub. Of the men who signed the Declaration of Independence, a majority of them, 41 of them, were themselves slave owners. So from the very, very beginning, this is not news. From the very beginning, we have been this dichotomy. From the very beginning, we have both been a country founded on the most enlightened principles that had ever imbued the founding documents of any country, and at the same time have been ourselves, in certain ways, the most wicked transgressors against the principles on which we purport to stand. Now, some people act like they just realized this, so they have a new interpretation of American history. This is not news. Now, the narrative of American political history has been that with every generation, this struggle has appeared. With every single generation, there have been those whose hearts were on fire with the possibility. On fire with the possibility that we could actually create on earth a more perfect union, the union being conceptual, abstract, spiritual, that we could actually make this happen. And there have been people in every generation who've realized that this is something that more than just gives us rights. It gives us the responsibility to improve this, to maintain it, to foster it, and then to bequeath it to our children. This idea, this conceptualization, that is what is exceptional about America. And with every generation, there have been those who were willing to struggle, who were willing to sacrifice, and in some cases have been called on and have been willing to die for that possibility. But also in every generation from the very beginning, there have been those whose whole behavioral patterns basically said, let's not. So what we have had is we have gone through our history, we've had slavery, but the story of America is not just we had slavery. The story of America is that we also had abolition. The story of America is denial of any rights of ownership, of any type of rights to even have power with their own children, and any right to vote. We had the suppression of rights over women, but we also had waves of feminism and women's suffrage. We had segregation and institutionalized white supremacy in the American South. But let me tell you what else we had. We had the civil rights movement. We had denial of rights in so many ways to gay people, but then we also had the marriage equality movement and the gay rights movement. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, we've always had these problems. But the point is that we must identify the problems with clear eyes, but let us identify with the problem solvers. Because this is the point. We are not the first generation to have to deal with the attacks and the assaults on everything sacred about democracy the way we do now. Because what is happening now is that we have reverted. We have subconsciously reverted to an aristocratic paradigm. And you can call it a plutocracy, you can call it an oligarchy, you can call it a corporatocracy. It doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is that in the last few decades, we have actually systematically created a situation where for all intents and purposes, at least economically, it is though only a few Americans are entitled to easy access to health care, are entitled to easy access to higher education, are entitled to the kinds of wealth opportunity, creating opportunity that really makes self-actualization possible. No, ladies and gentlemen, it's important that we get what's happening here. This is not the first time a generation of Americans has had to face an assault against the very foundations of this country. But let's not be the first generation to wimp out on doing what it takes to get this country back on track. That's what matters here.